The drive up the gravel road to my cabin had always been my favorite part of the week. The air got cleaner with every mile, the pine trees whispered in the wind, and the world seemed to fade away as I climbed toward my little slice of heaven. But that Saturday morning, something was wrong, very wrong. From the moment I turned the last bend, my gut tightened. The heavy iron gate I kept locked at all times, the one that clearly said, "Private Property," in bold red letters, stood wide open. And parked halfway up the winding driveway was a shiny black SUV that didn't belong to anyone I knew. I slowed my truck, every instinct telling me something wasn't right. The crunch of the tires on gravel seemed louder in the silence of the woods. And then I saw them. 3 figures stood on the porch of my cabin. A tall man in a slick suit, polished shoes that didn't belong anywhere near the dirt of my mountain, a woman in sky-high heels who looked like she'd never hiked a trail in her life, and in the middle, clipboard clutched in her manicured hand, was Karen. The queen of the HOA. If arrogance were a cologne, she'd be drowning in it. She stood there like she owned the place, her blonde bob perfect, sunglasses perched on her nose, scanning my property like it was merchandise at a store she was considering buying. I killed the engine and stepped out of the truck, my boots crunching on the gravel as I walked toward them. My voice was calm but carried that low warning that only a fool would ignore. "Mind telling me what the hell you're doing on my porch?" The man in the suit turned with a wide, practiced smile, extending his hand as though nothing was wrong. "Ah, you must be the seller," he said cheerfully. "Name's Mark, from Pinecrest Realty. Beautiful property you've got here. Should be an easy sale." I didn't shake his hand. I just stared at it, then back at his face. "Seller, this cabin isn't for sale." Karen let out a sharp laugh, the kind meant to humiliate. "Oh, don't be ridiculous," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "The HOA board has already approved the listing. We just need you to sign the papers so we can get it on the market. It's really in everyone's best interest." I blinked, trying to process the audacity. "First off," I said, stepping closer to the porch, "this cabin has been in my family for 30 years. Second, you have no legal claim to this land. And third," my eyes slid to the garish, "for sale" sign leaning against the porch railing. "What the hell do you think you're doing trespassing?" Mark, the realtor, shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension he'd just walked into. "Ma'am," he said carefully, turning toward Karen, "you told me the property was cleared for listing. You said you were representing the owner." Karen's smile faltered for half a second, then returned sharper than before. "This community has rules," she snapped. "This cabin has been vacant for too long, and you've ignored every letter we've sent. We decided it was time someone more cooperative took ownership. The HOA has the right to manage neglected properties, and..." "Neglected?" I cut her off, my voice flat but edged with steel. "Lady, this place is better maintained than your entire manicured cul-de-sac. The lawn's trimmed, the dock's in perfect condition, and every nail in this cabin is exactly where it should be. Don't you dare stand there and tell me my property is neglected, just because you don't like the fact that I don't attend your HOA meetings." She tilted her head, lips curling into a smirk. "You're not exactly being neighborly, are you? That's not how we do things around here." I stepped forward, boots hitting the first step of my porch, closing the space between us. The man in the suit instinctively took a step back, but Karen held her ground. "You're gonna take that sign," I said evenly, pointing at it, "and you're gonna get off my porch. Now, before I call the sheriff and have you all arrested for trespassing." Mark swallowed hard, already gathering his folder and muttering something about a miscommunication, but Karen wasn't done. "You think you can threaten me?" she hissed, eyes flashing. "The HOA can make your life very, very difficult if you don't cooperate. We control the roads, the utilities, the community amenities." I almost laughed. "You don't control a damn thing on this land, Karen," I said, voice dropping low. "The roads up here. Private. Utilities. I own my well, my septic, my power. Amenities. I build my own dock, my own trails, my own everything. You can file as many fake violations as you want, but when you step foot past that gate without my permission, you're nothing but a trespasser." Her face went crimson. The realtor mumbled something about leaving, but Karen jabbed a finger toward me, her nails glittering in the morning sun. "You're going to regret this," she spat. "Nobody defies the HOA and gets away with it." I tilted my head slightly, calm as ever. "Consider this your first and last warning," I said quietly. "Next time you're on my property, it won't be a conversation. It'll be a sheriff's report." For a tense moment, the only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Then, with an indignant huff, Karen turned sharply on her heel, stomping down the steps and toward the SUV, heels clicking angrily against the wood. Mark followed quickly, murmuring apologies as he trailed after her. I stood there, arms crossed, and watched as they climbed into the SUV and backed down my driveway in a spray of gravel. When the dust finally settled, I stepped up onto my porch, looking down at the shiny, "For sale" sign they'd left behind. I picked it up, leaned it against the side of my shed, and shook my head. "Not for sale," I muttered to myself, the words tasting sharp but steady. I didn't know what Karen was planning next, but one thing was certain: this was my land. And if the HOA thought they could push me around, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. By Monday morning, I knew the storm was coming. Karen didn't take "no" for an answer, especially not when her authority was challenged. And from the way she'd screeched threats as she left my property 2 days ago, I could tell she wasn't done. Sure enough, around noon, my phone buzzed with a call from the county clerk's office. "Mr. Walker," the voice said carefully, "we've received a notice from the Pine Ridge HOA claiming your property is being listed for sale under their management. Is that accurate?" I gripped the phone tighter, biting back a laugh that was anything but amused. "Not even close," I said. "My property is private. That HOA has no legal jurisdiction here. Check the deed if you don't believe me. It's been in my name for 30 years. There was a pause, a shuffle of papers, then an embarrassed sigh. "Yes, sir, I see that now. We'll flag their notice as invalid." "Do that," I said calmly. "And if they try again, tell them I'll see them in court." I hung up, shaking my head. Typical Karen, all noise and no brains. But if she wanted a fight, she'd just declared one. By mid-afternoon, I decided to drive into town for supplies, and that's when I saw them. Parked just beyond my gate, lined up like vultures, with 3 SUVs. And standing there, arms crossed and sunglasses perched high on her nose, was Karen, flanked by 2 board members I vaguely recognized. Behind them was a small crowd of curious neighbors, phones out, recording like it was some kind of reality show. I slowed my truck, rolled down the window, and leaned my arm casually on the frame. "You need something," I called, keeping my voice calm, almost bored. Karen's lips curled into a smug grin. "You've left us no choice, Mr. Walker," she said, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "You've ignored every notice, refused to comply with the HOA regulations, and now, we're taking action. Consider this your eviction notice." I actually laughed, out loud. "Eviction? From my own property? You've really lost it, Karen." Her grin didn't falter. "The bylaws are clear. All properties within the Pine Ridge community are subject to HOA oversight. You don't follow the rules, you don't get to stay." I stepped out of the truck slowly, boots crunching on the gravel, and walked toward the gate. The crowd hushed as I pulled the thick envelope from my back pocket. "Funny thing about those bylaws," I said, flipping open the documents. "This cabin, it's on a separate deed. My land isn't part of your community. Never has been, never will be. And you know what else?" I held up the second page, letting the bold heading catch the sunlight. "See this. This says I own not just this cabin, but the access roads, the boat docks, and, wait for it, the lake your entire HOA uses for those summer barbecues and boat parties. You're not the ones with power here, Karen. I am." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's smug expression faltered for the briefest second, but she quickly recovered, turning her performance back on for the cameras. "You're bluffing," she said sharply. "This is just another scare tactic from a selfish recluse who thinks the rules don't apply to him." "Bluffing," I said, raising a brow. "Try me. The sheriff's department already has the deed on file. You step 1 foot past this gate again without my permission, and you're looking at a trespassing charge." The board members beside her shifted uncomfortably, clearly not eager to be arrested. But Karen wasn't ready to back down. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret making an enemy of the HOA." I leaned against the gate, folding my arms. "No, Karen," I said evenly, "you'll regret thinking you could bully me. Now take your circus and get off my road." For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the SUVs started backing away, neighbors muttering under their breath, some even shooting me apologetic looks as they left. Karen lingered, her eyes burning with fury, before finally storming back into her vehicle and peeling out, kicking up a cloud of dust. By the time the road was empty again, the only sound left was the wind rustling through the trees and the distant call of a hawk overhead. I locked the gate behind me, double-checking the chain, and walked back up to the cabin. My hands were steady, but my mind was already racing. This wasn't the end. That night, I sat on my porch, a glass of bourbon in hand, watching the reflection of the moon on the lake. I'd been patient, calm, civil, even, but Karen had crossed the line, and I had no intention of letting her walk all over me. By morning, the first part of my plan was in motion. I printed a large, clean sign and mounted it right at the edge of the main access road. The bold black letters on the bright white background made sure there was no confusion. Private property. Access by permission only. Trespassers will be prosecuted. And just beneath that, in slightly smaller text, lake access restricted until further notice. By noon, the phone started ringing. First it was a timid board member, asking if the sign was really necessary. Then a neighbor, politely asking if her kids could still use the dock for fishing. And then, of course, Karen. Her voice was shrill enough to pierce the receiver. You can't just shut down the lake. That's a community resource, and you know it. No, Karen, I said, keeping my tone calm and measured. It's my resource. And until you and your little entourage stop harassing me and trying to sell my cabin, consider the lake, and the docks, off limits. You can't. I cut her off. I can. And I have. Goodbye, Karen. I hung up before she could respond, a small smile tugging at my lips. By that evening, I sat back on my porch again, watching the empty docks down by the water. No boats. No parties. No laughter. Just silence, a silence that spoke louder than any threat. For the first time since the HOA started their nonsense, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. They'd wanted to play games. Now, they were playing on my terms.